All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Alan Kingsley, and I am one of the academic success counselors here in the graduate program at Post University. I'll be conducting our seminar tonight on academic writing and developing your academic voice. I'm going to go ahead and share my presentation. So give me just a moment to get that going. There we go. Okay. Can everybody see the title screen there? Academic Writing Workshop.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. And just as a reminder, we are recording tonight. So this will be up on the university YouTube page tomorrow. If you'd like to review anything that we talk about, or you'd like a copy of the presentation, you can visit the YouTube page or send an email to myself or your academic advisor, and they'll be happy to get in touch with me. I can send you everything we're going to be discussing this evening.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. So first and foremost, what we're doing tonight is talking about your academic voice. We're going to go over what exactly is an academic voice, talk a little bit about embedded quotations, paraphrasing, signaling, some tips to improve your academic writing, and there's going to be some time left over for Q&A. A lot of this information came tonight from the University of Arizona Writing Center and the Penn State University Library Services. I put the links there on the page, and I wanted to point that out specifically because if you notice, those are two different universities, but I'm a big believer in if it ain't broke, don't fix it. They did some really good work on this, and I want to make sure I give them credit. And I want to, I wanted to bring that up because when we're talking about academic writing, often we want to use our own voices and we want to make sure that we are giving our own flavor to things. But there is something to be said for people who've said it exactly right and being able to incorporate the right pieces of things into your writing. So in these cases, they did a great job. So I was happy to borrow some of that information for tonight's presentation.
Okay.
Okay. So first and foremost, academic voice. What is academic voice? Really, this is the way that you are going to be presenting yourself in a classroom. The same way that you don't talk to your boss, the same way that you talk to your mom, the same way that you talk to your instructor or to your friends. You use a different voice for all of these different areas, and you're going to be using a different voice when you talk in the classroom. Especially at a graduate level, it's really important to make sure that you're coming across professionally and that you're making yourself as clear and understandable as possible while still sounding the way that you want to sound. The basics of academic voice really are using declarative statements, so not using I statements. We're going to get to some examples of that a little bit later, but instead of I think or I feel, those are often not necessary ways to start your sentence. Excuse me, a little bit of cough tonight. But no I statements, using declarative statements, anyway, stating things as facts. Avoiding casual language, which can be talking to your reader the way that you would talk to your friend, or using abbreviations for things. Being concise and precise. And always using sources to back up your statements. And we're going to go into a bit more of all of that. But you want to avoid simple Google searches. Using academic sources are always going to get you farther. They're going to be things you can rely on a whole lot more. Google is your friend. Don't get me wrong. We're in 2022. It's silly to think otherwise. But Google can also bring you all kinds of places. And it doesn't necessarily mean the information you're getting simply because it's written down is really the kind of information that can stand up to scrutiny or that you want to be using in your papers. But the Trareg library online through Blackboard is fantastic. We have a great support staff there to use them as well. So relying on those academic sources are always going to bring you a whole lot further. And of course, using citations in your paper to make sure that you're pointing out your sources when you use them. We've done some previous webinars on APA format and advanced APA format. So I can always point you to those, and we have the Writing Center. They do some great work with APA as well. So I statements are often an easy way to want to start your paper. You know, it's the simplest way to write, really, is to go from your own perspective. I think, I believe, I feel. But often they can take a little bit of the punch out of your sentences. So, for example, I think that school uniforms benefit students by eliminating competition based on designer labels. There's nothing wrong with that statement per se. The statement below it, though, is the same information written in a declarative statement. School uniforms benefit students by eliminating competition based on designer labels. All they really did was chop out those first three words, I think that. And chopping out that beginning portion of your sentence, it turns this from an opinion statement into a fact. You know, saying I think or I believe is always going to kind of, it's going to kind of give you room for doubt. It's like, it kind of says, well, this is my opinion, but who am I? There's always that little bit of room in there for maybe, maybe not. And declarative statements don't do that. They help, you know, they tell the reader without having to hammer it at them that this statement is, you know, again, that this is a fact. This is the way that this is. This is something you can trust. So whenever possible, you want to remove those I statements. This is also an easy way, you know, when your professors talk about writing in the third person, removing I statements, chopping out the I think out of your statements is a very easy way to not change your paper substantially, but remove that first person out of what you're writing. Casual language. So casual language, again, is something we've all become very, very comfortable with in 2022. You know, we all have social media. We have, you know, so we have Facebook, we have texting. We are probably as a people writing more right now than we are at any other point in history. And I'm sorry, I'm not sure how much my mic is picking up. I have a very unhappy toddler in the next room over. So if that's bleeding over, I apologize. But I appreciate you bearing with. So, but anyway, casual language, again, is something we use all the time. We're writing more right now than we probably ever have before as a civilization. But a lot of it isn't necessarily going to translate into the classroom. When you write the way that you speak, it often, to you as the writer, is going to feel like, well, you know, this is my voice. This is my voice as an author. This is giving them who I am. This is my own personal style. But it's not always going to be something. It isn't always going to be something that is going to make you sound authoritative and it's going to make you sound, not to put too fine a point on it, but to make it sound like you know what you're talking about. You know, there's nothing wrong with writing casually. Again, when you're texting, that's fine. Even when you're in discussion boards, that can be fine, depending on the class and the expectations of the professor. But the way you write in the classroom is different than the way you write socially. You know, this is why there's not any good video game movies. You know, video games and movies are two different mediums. The things you do in a video game aren't like the things you do in a movie. They can both be enjoyable. They're both great in the way they are, but they aren't necessarily interchangeable. Casual language and formal academic language are the same way. There's nothing wrong with either one, but the casual language isn't necessarily going to get your point across as a serious academic and as somebody who is speaking from a voice of, of research and understanding. So the example I've got here is, hey, let me get your opinion on this. When people tell a story, which do you prefer? A person who repeats themselves, even if their point's already addressed, or someone who keeps it simple and gets to the point? That can be rewritten as, people tend to enjoy speakers who do not repeat themselves, but who keep their message quick and to the point. In a fast-paced world, people prefer someone who can keep a story short and simple. In that first example, that first sentence, the writer is talking to the reader as if they're involved in a conversation. And again, that can be very tempting. It's a way to draw in your reader in certain kinds of writing. But rather than leaving the reader to guess, or again, you're not asking them what their opinion is because you're interested in the answer, you're trying to lead them to something. So rather than trying to lead them to something, rather than beating around the bush, let's just be straight. Tell them exactly what you want to get to. People tend to enjoy speakers who do not repeat themselves, rather than making it a question that isn't really a question. And that really goes hand in hand with the way you write your sentences. Okay. It's very easy to get overly complex, especially when you're writing academically, especially when you're trying to hit a page limit. It can be very tempting to want to write, at the present time, a total of 4 researchers summarized to preview the results of 2 different and varying groups' tests. You can say that exact same thing in about half of the page space. 4 research summarized the results of 2 groups' tests. It's straightforward, it's clear, and it doesn't mince words. I think it's very easy to want to write, especially when you're a newer student. Or someone who's been out of academic writing for a while. It's very easy to want to feel like you need to use big words because you're in grad school, or you need to use the synonym with the most syllables because that's clearly going to be the best way to express your point. But that's really very rarely the right way to approach these sentences. I think it can often come off as somebody who is trying to sound smart, as opposed to being the smart people that you already are. So keeping it short, keeping it concise. I will also tell you, me personally as a writer, this is where I flounder all the time. I've been doing this a long time and I still have problems. Everybody does. Nobody is perfect at this. But me, I like it's the way I write. I like to write long, complicated sentences. And often I've got to go back and shorten and take it out and find another way to say it because I just wrote a paragraph that takes up an entire page. And it really doesn't need to be that way. So once you start to realize what your little tics are, you'll learn how to do this. But this is one of mine, keeping it short. Often short sentences, honestly, are more impactful than longer ones. Using specific academic wording. Okay, and this, again, is a part of what we've already talked about, but teachers are adapting their methods to meet the needs of each student versus teachers are differentiating instruction. Okay, differentiating instruction is a specific term in education. So if you are writing for an audience that's going to understand that has a backing in education, you don't need to use 10 words when 2 will do. Differentiating instruction, using that term tells them that you understand what that term is. Okay, precise academic words, simply saying what you mean. Researchers had a really good response to the survey versus researchers had a 75% response rate to the survey. Specific information is always going to be preferable to generalizations. Okay, the more often you can be specific with facts, figures, numbers, the more clear and understandable your writing is going to be. Because really good means a different thing to me than it does to you, more than likely. And that's not helping anybody understand anything. So let's talk a little bit about embedded quotes. Okay, embedded quotes are a more natural way of putting quotes into your writing and still citing the author. It's very, very tempting to want to use direct quotations all the time. Again, especially at a grad level, especially in any kind of academic setting, because you want to be clear, because you want to be precise, because you want to make sure that you are giving them information in the right way and not saying the wrong thing because you used the wrong synonym. But often they're going to be really clunky. So instead of using a direct quote, you can use embedded quotes. They're going to help improve the flow of your writing. It's going to let you incorporate your own words into the quote to help it transition smoothly. And it's going to create a balance between your own words and those of the authors that you've researched. So embedded quotes. Here we go. An embedded quote looks like this. In his influential work, The Interpretation of Dreams, Freud argued that dreams are the royal road to the unconscious, expressing in coded imagery the dreamer's unfulfilled wishes through a process known as dream work. There are two embedded quotes in this sentence. The royal road to the unconscious and dream work. These are both specific phrases that are going to essentially let the reader know that you've read this. You know, that these are the things. This is a specific language that Freud's used. So you want to use the same language he has when you are talking about the things that he was, the things that he read. But it doesn't mean you need to pull an entire direct quote to break up your page. Everything around those two phrases, the royal road to the unconscious and dream work, that is your own writing. All right, that is you as the author explaining things in a way that's going to help this connect to the prior sentence and the next sentence. Something that paraphrasing also does, or something that using your own words also does, and I'll talk about this in a moment with paraphrasing. Paraphrasing shows the reader that you understand the content that you've read. When you're using your own words, you are taking what they said and you're spitting it out in a different way. It's anybody can pull a sentence out of a paragraph and plunk it in your own paper. But if you're able to read that information, understand it, and give it back to them in your own words, it's a small difference. It seems like a small difference, but what it's really showing is I understood this to the point where I can do this myself. And the only information you really needed to paraphrase, or the only you really needed to pull, rather, as a direct quote, are those very specific phrases from Freud. Now, if you notice, there is also a citation on here. If you're familiar with APA, you've done any of the APA workshops we put on previously, you might recognize it. Rather than having to put in parentheses at the end, Freud, 1925. Because you're using Freud in the sentence already, all you need to do is put the 1925 next to the title of the work. And then next to each little sentence fragment that you've pulled, put the page where that sentence fragment was located. And that works as an in-text citation. And if you've already said the author's name, you really don't need to say it again. It's a much simpler way of working the in-text citation into your writing in a way that doesn't break it up. Okay. So I mentioned paraphrasing, and I want to talk a little more directly about paraphrasing. So in short, good paraphrasing skills are the hallmark of good academic writing. All right, it helps to make your argument to the reader in your own words and allows you to validate your words through sources, just as if you were using direct quotations. And just in general, paraphrasing is going to improve the flow of your paper. Where am I? There we go. That was weird. So let's compare these two statements. According to Jones, 2014, open quote, childhood obesity should be treated like any other chronic disease, including through the use of medication. Close quote. Page 149, period. The second sentence, Jones, 2014, has argued that childhood obesity should be viewed as a medical condition, and as such, treatment with drugs should be an option. Now, both passages speak to the need to treat childhood obesity as a medical condition. They're both saying the same thing. but the paraphrased passage demonstrates the author's knowledge of their research through their own words and not a quote. Again, this is something that helps these statements fall in line with the way you already write and allows the reader, in this case, in many cases in here, your instructor, to know that you understand this because you're not just pulling out someone else's words. This is also the kind of thing that's going to help you avoid plagiarism, quite honestly, because often, you know, when we're looking for plagiarism, when especially our little automatic censors and things, they're looking at how much direct language you're pulling from other places. How much of your paper is made up by direct quotes. And I will tell you, as a teacher, I've had students who are submitting me papers that are all perfectly cited, but are 40%, 60% direct quotations from other people. That doesn't tell me that you understood this. I can't even grade that writing. That's not your writing. That's somebody else's writing. You've just organized it. So paraphrasing is going to help show that you understood this, and it's going to help you integrate it in a way that makes sense to you. All right, that's that second sentence. Treatment with drugs is going to sound better in my writing than including through the use of medication. So I've got some tips here on paraphrasing and how to do this well. First is to read and reread the selected source material and make sure you do understand it thoroughly. Make sure you know what you're talking about. And take notes as you're reading. In your own words, what are the main points the author's trying to make? Again, give your own little cliff notes of what's trying to be said. And then this can be the big piece of this. Put the original passage away. Close the book, look away from the screen, and then rephrase the passage in your own words using your notes as your guide. All right, take what you know, and write it again without looking at what they said. Imagine you're trying to explain the concept to somebody who knows nothing about it. When you're finished, check your paraphrase. Check it out against the original. If your wording is too close, or you use any unique terminology from the author, that's a good time for you to embed your quote. Put the quotation marks around them, and you can simply add a citation. And that way you know you're happy with the way this looks. You're giving credit to any specific words or phrases the author used that are unique to their to their writing, but still lets the bulk of what you have written be yours. And depending on which program you're in, I know it's especially true in the Counseling and Human Services program, paraphrasing is key. Direct quotes are, especially at the higher levels, but really all over, are all but forbidden in some of these programs. They really, really want you to be using paraphrasing. So give it a try. And I think you'll find the papers come across sounding a whole lot more natural. The next thing I want to talk about is signaling. So whether you're using paraphrases or quoted material, it's important to let your reader know whose turn it is in the paper. Again, it's kind of like being a choir director conducting singers. Me, or you, the writer, you are in charge. If there's no signal phrase or citation attached to the idea, the assumption is the idea came from you. So anytime you're using somebody else's information, somebody else's thoughts, somebody else's direct quotation, anything like that, you want to make sure that you are giving that person the spotlight. So some really common signals in your writing, according to Smith, 2014, or Smith states, Smith points out, as stated in Smith, Smith argues, Smith asserts, Smith believes, as emphasized in Smith. These are all just easy ways to start a sentence that are going to tell the reader that you are talking about, you're showing them what somebody else has had to say. If you're not doing that, they're going to assume it's just you. One of the other important pieces of good writing, just in general, it doesn't have a bullet point in this presentation, but is to do, you shouldn't be starting paragraphs with a direct quotation ever. They should very rarely, if ever, be the first thing you write in a paragraph. But signaling is a really, really easy way around that. All you need to do is put a couple of words in front of it that are going to give them an idea, the reader idea of who they're talking to, because otherwise they're going to think they're talking to you. Right? So that really is just directing the reader's attention a certain way. Costello and others, for example, state the urgent need to test and to make use of age-appropriate interventions for depressed pre-adolescent children. For example, it's been found that, et cetera, et cetera. Again, just a very easy way to give them it sounds natural as your eyes glance right by it to get to the meat of the sentence, but you've informed your reader that you're really talking about Costello here. You're telling them what Costello and others have had to say. Right. Tips to improve academic writing. First and foremost, as I was just talking about, start using fewer quotes and more paraphrases. Again, your instructors want to see your writing, and you want to reach your own conclusions. You don't just want to regurgitate what you've been reading in other places. You want to be able to express yourself, and paraphrasing is going to help you do that. You're going to sound more professional, and your writing is going to flow a whole lot better. Focus on academic writing as dedicated time. Stay away from texting, social media, etc., while writing papers. And really, that's because you're immersing yourself in the correct way to write. If you start, if you're taking a break every 10 minutes to take a look at something else, to go check out Facebook because you're involved in a text conversation. Again, nothing wrong with any of those activities, but it is going to get you out of the zone of academic writing and into writing it's a lot more casual. Have a colleague or instructor give you feedback before a paper's due. This can often be difficult to pull off because we are all busy people. We're all working adults. We've all got a lot that we are juggling as we go to school. But we have some really excellent resources for exactly this kind of thing. One of the sources that you may already be familiar with is called TutorMe. You can find it under the student services in Blackboard. And they are a 24/7 online tutoring service that we work with. Their resources in the grad department are limited, unfortunately. They work with a lot of great people. There are some really excellent tutors through TutorMe, but a lot, because of the level of understanding that's required, they have a lot less in terms of content. But something that I will always encourage my students to do is to use their writing center. You can submit your paper to them as long as you give them a day or so to do it. Submit your paper to them, let them know what you're looking to do or what you're trying to look for, and they will give you feedback on your paper. So if you have a paper due Sunday and you get it done on Friday, you can submit it to them Friday night. You'll have it back by Saturday. And you can let them know I'm trying to use paraphrasing. I'm trying to work on my academic voice. What do you think? Or it could also be I'm bad with commas, or I was trying to make this point. What do you guys think? They're a really excellent service. It's part of what you get through your tuition. I think you get 10 free hours per term right off the bat. If you run out, come talk to your advisor. We can get you more. But they are I think a very underused service that TutorMe offers is to look at your papers for you. And your instructors will often do the same thing for you. If you let them know this is what I'm trying to do, this is the area I'm working on, can you give me some feedback? They'll give you feedback early. And a lot of that's going to come down to time management on your part. It's understanding how your week works, where you've got that free time, And if it is your goal to have this done by Friday instead of Sunday, where do you find those extra couple of hours? But if you can make it happen, it's a good habit to get into, and you can get that feedback ahead of time. And then last is simply practice. There is a real myth about writing, I've found. Not just I found, that I've lived, is that most of us only encounter writing in its final form. They're the books that you pick up in the bookstore, the paper that gets, well, I guess papers don't get really delivered to your doorstep anymore, but you could do that. You can go to CNN.com and read those, read the articles there. And I assume that this is the way that it came out of their pen. That writing is, it sprang forth from their head, from the head of Zeus, this perfect novel. Oh my goodness, I cannot believe that Stephen King did it again. This was amazing. He is a genius. And maybe he is a genius, but he also works really hard at this. Every piece of writing you have ever loved started off as somebody's crappy first draft. It's always, always, always true. And they did drafts, writes, rewrites, edits. They have professional editors who go in and take a look at their stuff. But we don't see any of that. We just see that perfect paper, that perfect novel, that perfect thing sitting in the Journal of Psychiatric Medicine. You go like, wow, this person is an amazing writer, and I'm never going to live up to that. But it really is, it's practice, and it's doing it again and again and again. These people have done this enough, and it's slow going at first, but the more you do it, the better you get at it. And the more times you do it and the more times you fix things, the more you start to realize when you're making a mistake as you're making it, and you can correct in real time. You start to realize these things early. The more you practice, the better you get at this. So it can be a difficult thing to keep in mind because there's no silver bullet. There's no magic words. There's no way that you are suddenly going to be excellent at this. But you will improve. You will get better. And then one day you'll realize that you can do this blindfolded because you've done it 10,000 times over the last 10 classes. So that's the end of my presentation. I know it's a lot of information and a lot of me talking right at you, but any questions? Anything anything I talked about or anything you've been wondering that I can help with today?
Well, I've just always had, can you hear me?
I sure can.
Yeah.
Paraphrasing has always been my issue, and but I'm getting better at it.
Good.
I even came to you all before. I think it was through IT, but I'm getting better. It's getting better and better.
Good. And that's, you got to recognize those times when you're getting better because it does take time. It really takes time to, and you, to a certain extent, you got to have a thick skin about it because you're not going to be great at it at first. So you try it, you get it wrong. Next time you adjust, you get it a little less wrong. And then eventually you get it okay. And then you actually get good. And it does happen. It just, it requires being persistent and it requires being careful. I think that's one of probably the two big things that I've seen that help people's writing improve are being open to feedback,
Right.
and
That's true.
and being careful about what you're doing.
I know.
Because
excuse me, I hate to interrupt.
No, please. I talk a lot, so please interrupt me.
I've had some good instructors who have given me great feedback, so it has really helped me.
Wonderful. I'm so happy to hear that, and that can really be key, is having people who have got your back, who are on your side, and that want to see you get better at this.
Yeah.
So that's great. But yeah, keep at it. Keep working at it. Take the feedback, think about it, process it, digest it, and then do it again.
Yeah.
And you'll find it will happen. You will get better at this.
Yeah.
Alan, do you think that paraphrasing could be part of it, could be like considered as like critical thinking?
Absolutely.
Using critical thinking to paraphrase. That's what I do.
Yeah. I think that's
well, you know, the courses that I'm taking now, it's like almost 100% critical thinking. So
Yeah.
I pretty much dimensionalize it in so many different ways, but I believe that paraphrasing and critical thinking walk hand in hand. Because if you can think outside the box and think critically, that means that you're the one that's actually doing the thinking, which is you're going to be the one that's going to be doing the writing.
Oh, okay.
I think that that's a good way to put that. I mean, yes,
Yeah.
this is paraphrasing really is. I mean, what you're doing when you're paraphrasing, you're demonstrating an understanding of the material.
Right.
You understand it well enough that you can repeat it back to them, but not word for word. You can put it in your own words. So yes, that is absolutely critical thinking. That's a great way to put it.
Okay. That sounds good. Thank you all.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you're so welcome. All right. Anything else that I can do for anybody tonight? Again, any questions or concerns or things you want me to go over again? All right. Well, then, yeah, if there's no other questions, again, we have this will be up on the YouTube page tomorrow. And I will put the link to our YouTube page in the chat here. If you'd like a copy of the presentation, contact your advisor. They'll get in touch with me. Or Bill, just ask me, and I will be happy to send the slides to you. Again, this is doable. It takes time, but it is absolutely something that you can do. And, you know, before you know it, you won't even recognize your own writing.
Now, you said you do this every Wednesday, Alan.
Yes, we have different.
This is the first time that I've seen it in my email, though.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, we have different topics every Wednesday. We've done them on APA in the past, time management.
Because I know you have to get it, because you have to get an invite, because we use Teams in my class.
Mm-hmm.
But because my computer, for some reason, because the other people in my class, they have jobs where they use Teams. See, my job is a food service job. I don't even use a computer. So
Right.
the only time I use a computer is when I'm at home doing schoolwork. So I always have to get somebody to invite me, because even though I downloaded the app, I had such a problem trying to get it to work, because it would send me to Microsoft this and have to give them a password for that. And even though I would go through the school, I don't know, either that or I was never trained with Teams, so I don't really know.
No, I'm sorry that was a trouble for you. Hopefully, now that you've got it set up now, it'll be, you know, smooth sailing after this. But yeah, every Wednesday we're trying to do a workshop or a seminar on something.
Okay.
So I will, yeah, I'll see what I can do about making sure that you get those invites.
Okay, because I check my email all the time. So
great. Well, yeah, then let's fix that.
Okay.
All right. Well, again, thank you all for coming tonight. I really appreciate your time. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you, Alan.
You're so welcome.
Have a good night, guys.
Good night.
Good night.